Anatoli Nikolaevich Boukreev was a Russian Kazakh mountaineer who made ascents of 10 of the 14 8,000 peaks, that is, peaks above 8,000 m, without supplemental oxygen. From 1989 through 1997, he made 18 successful ascents of peaks above 8,000 m. Boukreev had a reputation as an elite mountaineer in international climbing circles but became more widely known for his role in saving climbers during the 1996 Mount Everest disaster. In 1997, Boukreev was killed in an avalanche during a winter ascent of Annapurna in Nepal. Boukreev's companion, Linda Wiley, edited his memoirs and published them in 2002 under the title, Above the Clouds, The Diaries of a High-Altitude Mountaineer. Biography: Boukreev was born in Korkino, within the Russian SFSR of the Soviet Union. He came from the Narod, the common people, and his parents were both poor. After completing high school in 1975, he attended Chelyabinsk University for Pedagogy, where he majored in physics and earned his Bachelor of Science degree in 1979. At the same time, he also completed a coaching program for cross-country skiing. After graduation, the 21-year-old dreamed of mountain climbing. Boukreev moved to Alma-Ata, the capital of the neighboring Kazakh SSR located in the Tian Shan mountain range. From 1985 he was part of a Kazakhstani mountaineering team, and he became a citizen of the Kazakhstan Republic in 1991 after the breakup of the Soviet Union. Climbing accomplishments: the major highlights of Boukreev's climbing career are as follows. 1987, Lenin Peak a first solo ascent. April 15, 1989 Kanchenjunga new route with 2nd Soviet Himalaya expedition. April 30, May 2 Kanchenjunga first traverse of the 4 8,000 m summits of the Massif. 1990 April Mount McKinley Kassin Ridge route, May Mount McKinley West Rib route. May 10, 1991 Dhaulagiri new route on the West Wall with 1st Kazakhstan Himalaya expedition, October 7 Mount Everest South Col route. May 14, 1993 Mount McKinley, July 30 K2 Abrazi route. April 29, 1994 Makalu 2, May 15 Makalu. May 17, 1995 Mount Everest North Ridge route, June 30 Peak Abaya Guide for President of Kazakhstan, October 8 Dhaulagiri fastest ascent record, December 8 Manailu with 2nd Kazakhstan Himalaya expedition. May 10, 1996 Mount Everest South Col route, May 17 Lhasa solo ascent, speed record, September 25 Choila with 3rd Kazakhstan Himalaya expedition, October 9 North Summit of Shishapangma. April 24, 1997 Mount Everest, May 23 Lutz, July 7 Broad Peak solo ascent, July 14 Gashibramdu solo ascent. Denali In May 1990, Boukreev was invited by an American climber to guide several clients to the summit of Denali in Alaska. Denali, previously known as Mount McKinley, has its challenges such as hidden crevasse and unpredictably cold weather due to its proximity to the Arctic Circle and the ocean. The expedition was a success and the team reached a summit and returned without incident. During the climb there had been somewhat of a language barrier and Boukreev felt the sting of needing to borrow equipment due to his economic circumstances. After the team had returned home, Boukreev decided to attempt a solo speed ascent of Denali before returning to the Soviet Union. Boukreev's solo speed ascent of Mount McKinley in 1990 was completed in 10.5 hours from the base to the summit. That season acclimated climbers were normally taking 3 to 4 days and 5 camps to summit Boukreev's feat was noted by Climbing magazine in a 1990 issue, and commented on by Denali park rangers who described it as unreal. K2 In 1993, Boukreev reached the summit of K2 via the Abrazi Spurs, where he shared the peak with team members Peter Metzger of Germany and Andy Locke of Australia. The other team members were German climbers Rian Mudgerswig and Ernst Eberhardt. With a peak elevation of 8,611 meters, K2 is the second highest mountain on Earth after Mount Everest. As part of the Karakoram Range, K2 is located on the border between Pakistan and India. K2 is referred to as the Savage Mountain, notable for its steep pyramidal relief, dropping quickly in almost all directions, and the inherent danger in climbing it. The danger facing Boukreev on K2 is that the summit felt like the finish line. Boukreev would later write that he did not feel the emotions of victory in that moment on top of K2's peak because he was physically and emotionally spent. Boukreev found himself in a dangerous position. He had expended too much energy placing fixed lines along a narrow, steep portion earlier that day. But since the team wanted to push on to the summit that same afternoon, rather than return to their tents to sleep and make a summit bid the next morning, Boukreev acquiesced. Boukreev would later write, "During my years of training as a ski racer, and then as a mountaineer, I had learned how to wring out the last of my energy for a finish. But this is dangerous in mountaineering, because the summit is not the finish of your competition with a great mountain. To survive you must be able to get down from the forbidden zone." Boukreev later described feeling like a squeezed lemon. When Boukreev and the other two climbers began their descent just after sundown, they met Reinmar ascending and near the peak. Relying heavily on intuition and his previous mountaineering experiences, Boukreev slowly made his way down the steep rock and ice of the mountain. A crampon kept coming off of his boot, and another moment he had to use his ice axe to arrest falling and sliding into the abyss. Eventually he made his way to the tents at the highest elevation camp. Teammates Peter Metzger and Reinmar never appeared, however, each having fallen to their death during the descent. Everest Boukreev became widely known as the lead climbing guide for the Mountain Madness expedition headed by Scott Fisher in May 1996. The expedition was one of several attempting to summit Everest on the same day. Soon after summiting on May 10 a disastrous blizzard struck, stranding many climbers near the peak overnight, and by May 11, 8 climbers from 3 different expeditions had perished. Boukreev rescued 3 climbers stranded in the disaster above 8,000 m, and all 6 of the climbing clients on the Mountain Madness expedition survived the ordeal. Galen Rowell described Boukreev's rescue efforts in the Wall Street Journal as, however, author John Krakauer was generally critical of Boukreev in his book, Into Thin Air. Subsequently, Boukreev was contacted by various media for a response, and also wrote his own account of the events on Everest in the climb, a book co-written with Gary West and DeWalt. The core of the controversy was Boukreev's decision to attempt the summit without supplementary oxygen and to descend to the camp ahead of his clients in the face of approaching darkness and blizzard. He was one of the first to reach the summit on the day of the disaster and stayed at or near the summit for nearly 1.5 hours helping others with their summit efforts, before returning to his tent by 5 p.m. on May 10, well ahead of the later summiters on his team. Boukreev's supporters point to the fact that his return to camp allowed him enough rest that, when the blizzard had subsided around midnight, he was able to mount a rescue attempt and to lead several climbers still stranded on the mountain back to the safety of the camp. Boukreev's detractors say that had he simply stayed with the clients, he would have been in better position to assist them down the mountain, though it should be noted that every one of Boukreev's clients survived, including the 3 that he rescued on May 11 after he had rested and overcome hypoxia. The only client deaths that day was suffered by the Adventure Consultants expedition, led by guide Rob Hall, who lost his own life when he did choose to stay and help a client complete a late summit rather than helping the client descend and replenish. Before returning to the States after the events on Everest in 1996, Boukreev climbed the 8,516 meters Lutz, which is in proximity to Everest. He decided on the solo ascent because he hoped that in the process of climbing it he might find some inner clarity to what had just transpired on Everest. In 1997 Anatoli Boukreev was awarded with David A. Sowell's Memorial Award by American Alpine Club. The award recognizes people, who have distinguished themselves, with unselfish devotion at personal risk or sacrifice of a major objective, in going to the assistance of fellow climbers imperiled in the mountains. It is dedicated to the memory of David A. Sowell. It was presented to him by Jim Wickwire, the first American to summit K2. The award is the American Alpine Club's highest award for valor in recognition of his role in rescuing climbers in the 1996 Everest disaster. Death. 3 weeks later, Boukreev was attempting to climb the south face of Annapurna along with Simone Moro, an accomplished Italian mountaineer. They were accompanied by Dmitry Sobolev, a cinematographer from Kazakhstan who was documenting the attempt. On December 25 around noon, Boukreev and Moro were fixing ropes in a couloir at around the 5,700 m level. Suddenly, an enormous cornice broke loose from the heights of Annapurna's western wall and rumbled down the 800 meters long couloir. The avalanche knocked Moro down the mountain where he landed just above their tent at Camp by 5,200 m. Fortuitously, Moro had somehow stayed near the top of the avalanche debris and managed to dig himself out after a few minutes. Unable to see or hear any signs of Boukreev or Sobolev, Moro descended to Annapurna base camp where he was flown by helicopter back to Kathmandu for surgery on his hands, which had been ripped down to the tendons during the fall. News of the accident reached New Mexico on December 26. Linda Wiley, Boukreev's girlfriend, left for Nepal on December 28. Several attempts were made to reach the avalanche site by helicopter but inclement weather in late December prevented search teams from reaching Campi. On January 3, 1998, searchers were finally able to reach Campi and an empty tent. Linda Wiley subsequently issued a somber statement from Kathmandu. "This is the end. There are no hopes of finding him alive." Boukreev had dreamt in detail of dying in an avalanche 9 months before his death. The only thing missing was the name of the mountain. When Anatoli's companion tried to convince him to take a different path in life to avoid a fate that Boukreev was convinced of, he responded, "Mountains are my life. My work. It is too late for me to take up another road." Memorial At the site of Annapurna Base Camp there is a memorial shortened to Boukreev including a quotation of his. "Mountains are not stadiums where I satisfy my ambition to achieve, they are the cathedrals where I practice my religion." In popular culture, Icelandic actor Invar Sigurðardóttir portrays Boukreev in the Baltasar Kormákur film, Everest, about the 1996 Everest disaster. The film was released on September 18, 2015, and stars Jason Clarke, Keira Knightley, Jake Gyllenhaal, Sam Worthington, Josh Brolin and Robin Wright. See also, List of climbers, 1996 Everest disaster, List of Mount Everest summiters by number of times to the summit. Bibliography, The Climb, Tragic Ambitions on Everest by Anatoli Boukreev and Gary Weston de Walt, published by St. Martin's Paperbacks, 1997, ISBN 0-312-96533-8. Above the Clouds, The Diaries of a High-Altitude Mountaineer, written by Anatoli Boukreev. Collected and edited by Linda Wiley. Published by St. Martin's Griffin, 2002, ISBN 0-312-29137-X. References. External links, Anatoli Boukreev Memorial Fund, photo of Anatoli Boukreev and Martin Adams with Kazakhstan's state flag on Everest 1996.